Okay, let's go.
All right, welcome to the Q&A show on Photofocus for September 29th. I'm here with Colin Smith this week. Rob couldn't make it, not feeling well. But luckily we have a fantastic author. He has photoshopcafe.com and author of 20 books on photography and related. How's it going, Colin?
Doing good. How are you?
All right. Thanks for coming aboard. We're going to have you on as just come on for fun, but then Rob couldn't make it, so it's just you and me. But we have different Rob. Voices every time, which is great. Yeah. So, Colin, I've known you for years, just a little bit from shows here and there, and been a fan of a lot of the tutorials. And I know you are still nonstop because I see your postings about drone photography and HDR, of course, because that's something we're both into. And I'm glad to see you're still going full speed ahead and continuing to write books. And from what I understand, they're printed books, not just ebooks and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what they say, like, I guess, people say, hey, you follow your passion and you never work a day of your life. That's just kind of a catchphrase for people. But I guess I've been doing this for 30 years, so it's actually real for me, where actually I am passionate about what I'm doing. But it's finding a passion within the passion that keeps you going. So like just photography is very general, but you can find like different things within there that you are super excited about. And I think at that point, I'm not slowing down. I have no intention of slowing down. But as far as books, I mean, I do my own videos, as everybody knows. I released courses since the year 2000. So that's 22 years I've been doing that. Mm-hmm. But books, I've been actually writing books longer. I did my first book. I don't know what year it was. It was Photoshop 6. It was with Friends of Ed. And just kept doing books since then. But I've always done books through a publisher. I've never self-published a book. And the reason for that is, let them do what they're good at and I'll do what I'm good at. I've got my own audience online, which is a digital audience. But as far as when it comes to, like actually printing books and, there's a lot that goes into that. So, the publishers have relationships with bookstores, with distributors, and, I don't want to do all that. So that's why. And so my new book, my 21st book is about to come out, and I'm just going to show you here. It's not out yet, but it will be out very soon. In fact, last night I had a box of these show up, which means that it's not far, from being done. So this is with Rocky Nook, and they're fantastic. I've worked with, everyone from McGraw-Hill. I've worked with, pretty much most of the publishers, Peach Pit and all these guys. And seriously, Rocky Nook are the best people I've worked with. They're just fantastic, like really good. Ted and Scott, and they're just really straight up people, and one of the things I love about working with these guys is they actually let me have my voice. So I know in the early days when I first started writing books, they would edit you to death where you didn't even sound like yourself anymore.
Right.
And the guys at Rocky Nook, do the best photography books. And, I think that's why everybody's working with them now. And so anyway, so delighted to have my second edition. My first edition came out like 5 or 6 years ago. Actually became a bestseller. As far as I can tell, it's the best-selling book on drones.
And that's the second one.
Go. That's brand new and updated. Let's get it up the right way. There we go.
Well, most people get this on audio, but drone photography with drones.
It's Photographer's Guide to Drones. So this will be obviously you can get it on Amazon and they have an ebook version of it. But also it's nice to go in the bookstore and it'll be in Barnes and Nobles and whatever bookstores are left. It's always fun to go and get a cup of coffee and see your book on the shelf. It's quite a neat feeling. Yeah.
Talk about having good timing for a subject. I mean, that drone, that's all the rage still, and everybody. That's what I get asked about all the time. Oh, you're a photographer. Do you have a drone? It used to be, oh, you're a photographer. Do you shoot weddings? But now it's, do you have a drone? So
you shoot weddings with drones.
What's that? Yeah, that happens, right?
Oh yeah, I've shot weddings. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, yeah, we're good. We have one reason I wanted to have you on, Colin, is that we have questions that myself and Rob and other people we can answer probably pretty well, but some things we would like to have more expertise, like with Photoshop and stuff. So we'll have a few more chances to talk about your expertise because some of the questions are perfect for you. But let's and we'll also, just to give listeners an idea, we have some question about composition, which is always great to talk about. We have some follow-ups about NFTs and AI. We have follow-ups about distortion coming from the drone cameras, which you might be able to add some details to. I mentioned NFTs and AI, didn't I? And then selections in Photoshop. I mean, that's a good one. And if we have time, we'll even hit something about some bags. But really quickly, we want to thank Tamron for sponsoring. They want to promote their 28 to 200 zoom, which is for Sony full frame, and the big the detail to point out about this one is it starts out at 2.8, so it's f2.8 to 5.6, so it's 28 to 200. So it's one of those really good all-in-one carry around lenses that are fantastic for things like vacations and stuff where you don't want to have a ton of gear and be real versatile. So we, thanks to Tamron. I've been a Tamron user in the past, not at the moment, but we have a few Tamron lenses in the family. You have, what's your take on Tamron, Colin?
Well, actually, I happen to have one right here. I'm actually surrounded by gear. So recently, I kind of made the jump to Sony. I say recently, it's actually been a while now. But I've got a A1, a A7S3. I had the A7. My first digital camera was actually a Sony, but then I went to use Canon for a long time. But I've always used like manufacturer's lenses, and the only one that I have that is not is this Tamron right here for the Sony. This is the 17 to 28 2.8. Now, as far as I can tell, this is the lightest weight f2.8 that you can get at this focal length, and it's great for vlogging, and putting on a gimbal and stuff like that. So you probably see me at shows, I've kind of been vlogging a lot of shows. Like vlogging just means walking around with a camera and filming everything and interviewing people, and this saves my arm. Like, I put this on here actually that's a different one, but I put a G Master lens on there, and I'll look like the Incredible Hulk by the end of the day because those things are heavy. But yeah, so it's a great lens. It's sharp. Nice. Yeah, very happy with it.
Yeah, I was really happy using add something along the line. I think it was an 18 to 200 or something like that, but it didn't go to 2.8. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, the 2.8 is amazing, especially at this focal length. I think previously I had when I was shooting Canon, I had this 1740, but I think that was only an f4, wasn't it?
1740 with Canon, I couldn't tell you.
I know Sony came out with an f4 just recently, in a similar focal length, but then they also came up, I think, at 2.8 as well. But it's heavy; it's got a lot of glass in it. This thing's like light.
Yeah.
If you're using a gimbal, you want something wide and light.
Yeah. Nice. Vlogging at the shows with a mirrorless camera, that will pump up the arms all right. Instead of there's a couple of dedicated cameras that are good for that. I think I see people using is that the Osmo, or I don't know. Anyway, not something we were going to talk about, but hey, let's not keep people waiting and move on to first question. Dan, Michigan. Now we're going to have to control ourselves to keep from going on and on about this, but how do I stop composing my images with the project? I think he means the subject in the middle of the frame. Sometimes I have to translate the questions, but
so you mean like your camera framing versus my camera framing?
He's sorry,
I had to make a joke there because literally I'm on the third and you're in the center. But you do have nice leading lines coming in from your mic stand.
Well, I don't think that's the kind of composition that he's talking about. I think he's got a regular camera, And remember, people can't see us. Everybody, Colin and I can see each other because it makes it easier to record, but not every, this will go out mostly in audio. But he's asking about, I think he's saying that he's putting his subject too often in the middle of the frame and it's just not interesting. And he says, what other composition rules, what other composition rules should he look at outside of rule of thirds? Okay, so my take, hey, Colin, you're first time on this one, but the questions come in a little bit confusing sometimes. So I have to a little bit translate. So he's asking, what kind of composition ideas can we offer to make
that's a great
his
question.
shots more interesting? Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of answers to that. Because like central, I think everybody when they start shooting, the first thing they do is they just put everything in the middle because that just makes and usually way too much headroom too. Like actually, you and I have got about the same amount of headroom if people can't see it. So that's like that's a good amount of headroom there. You don't want too much; that shows you're an amateur. But really as far as like the rule of thirds is interesting because you've seen what's the other one, the more modified rule of thirds, where things are a little bit more towards the center. There's so many different.
Is there a word
ratio?
For that?
There's like
it's kind of like so the rule of thirds is rule. So first Dan that's asking the question, rule of thirds is a really good one, and that for anybody that doesn't know, probably listeners to Photofocus know that, but it's like tic-tac-toe board on the frame, and you want to put things on the lines, or even better on where the lines meet. Okay, so that's a great one, and I think we all use it. And so, Colin, you're saying that there's a kind of newer version where is it like the tic-tac-toe board gets kind of you just kind of zoom out, and so it's the lines are closer
there's
together.
An actual name to it, and I forget the name of it, but it's like a modified rule of thirds where it's like a tic-tac-toe, but it's more towards the center. So you're in the third, but you're more like maybe for those who can see us about where I am there rather than where I'm naturally sitting here. But I don't know. I mean, I think, I feel like it's the scene, what's the story you're trying to tell? Rules are, people say rules are there to be broken. They are, but you have to understand the rule first. So you can't break the rules if you don't know what they're supposed to be. Right. Otherwise it looks like a mistake. But rules are guidelines, and there's so many times, when you can do something completely different. I mean, like what's in the background, what are you, what story are you telling as is your subject like the main focus, or is, you're trying to tell a bigger story?
Yeah.
I personally like a lot of things with like leading lines and, like the golden spiral. So you can see things like not necessarily just a straight line and everything's like rigid and stiff, but you can have like that movement. So, when you're in the center, the thing about being in the center is there's no movement. It's a very static positioning. Whereas, when you put something in a different part of the frame, it creates some kind of a tension or some kind of a movement.
It's kind of the leading lines is one of my favorites to come to where you can direct the eye through the image by using a line, and preferably the line would be at best coming from a corner of the frame, kind of guides the eye. So I like that one a lot too. One of the things, since there's so many kinds of scenes, we don't even know what Dan's asking. It sounds like he's doing kind of portraits, but what about just don't just decide on one, but work the scene. So try different kinds of composition like you try one and don't put the pressure on to say that's got to be the one. It's try one and try something else and move around. Get down low, get up high, depending on the kind of scene. Like I was just trying to have fun shooting some people, shooting at sports, but getting away from not shooting the sport, but getting some of the things going on around it. So I was getting low and getting some of the lines coming off the field to guide toward things that I wanted, just experimenting and having fun with it. And that's, you see the experts like, Have you ever seen like Ben Long on used to be on Linda, at least I don't know if he still is, but he'd
Oh,
have
Ben
these
Long, I know the name. Yeah.
yeah, he would have these short little bites, and he'd show like he'd just be at a scene and go, I don't really see a photo here, but let's try to find one. You know, he'd move around and do kind of all
Mhm.
kinds of creative positioning and stuff. So try different things. The only other one that comes to mind, because you took a couple of my ideas, like breaking rules. Like, be really deliberate about how you're breaking it though, and have a purpose behind why and what you want to say. But you know what? If your subject's in the middle, you can use a square aspect ratio, and then it's usually better to have, for some reason, I don't even know why, I think it's just something psychological. It actually works to have your subject bang in the center if it's square. Not always, but sometimes, depends what it is. So I think,
Yeah.
I don't even remember who gave me that tip a long time ago, but I like it.
Well, I
Sometimes
think it
if
depends, too, what you're using the photo for or what it
mhm,
is, because if it's a portrait and you're going to use it as a headshot, then you're generally going to crop that in pretty tight anyway,
mhm,
because if you don't, when it goes online, the face is going to be so small, people are not going to see it.
yeah,
But I think
no,
one of the rules that I do follow pretty consistently when it comes to composition, like I was going to talk about height because eye level, unless you're doing a portrait, eye level can be really boring because that's what people are used to seeing all the time.
yeah,
But one of the things that I always do, and I very rarely deviate away from this, is always make sure that you're looking into the frame, like not looking out of the frame. So see,
mhm,
like I'm on the side, I'm looking in because people also tend to follow where your eye is looking. So if your eye is looking somewhere or the photograph of the person, then subconsciously you're also looking where they are. And if the person is facing out of the frame, it's taking the viewer out of the photograph. Whereas when the viewer is looking, or the subject is looking into the frame, it brings the viewer into the photograph because
mhm.
obviously the goal is to have the person looking at the photograph as long as possible.
I think that's one of those great tips to keep in mind, of like when the person is, if they're not looking right at the camera, that they're looking into the frame rather than out. And that's also one of those that can be, you can be broken to really great effect. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they'll break that so that the person is, let's say, on the left side of the frame, they're still looking to the left, and it again, it somewhere in our psychologically, it creates discomfort, and that can be used to really great power as well. So that's a good one for, you
Yeah.
usually do this, but if you want to break it, it can be interesting too.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, well, not a lot, but a few wonderful photographs where they're doing that. A lot of it too around rock and roll and music, because
Hmm.
there's a lot of rule breaking and that kind of style.
Yeah.
And you'll see, pictures of Mick Jagger and stuff like that looking out of the frame and just doing things that shouldn't be done, but it's really attention grabbing.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I guess a really good point in that genre where they want to create discomfort in a lot of ways anyway. Yeah. I had one other thought when I was thinking about this question is, don't forget that you can do a lot with cropping later. Like there, like
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
I think a few of us at the same time a few years ago came up with different words. Like mine was cromposition or something. It's a horrible sounding thing, but crop to do composition by cropping, and you can adjust it after the fact these days, because we don't have to get everything right in camera with the way things are. So don't forget that too. If you're not that happy with it, you might be able to do small tweaks. If you just take out, maybe you missed something around the edge of the frame, or you can clone it out, I guess too, but maybe just a small movement to put the eyeball or the something or other just right in that spot of the frame where you want it, and it can make a big difference. So just something
Mm.
else to think about if you're just
Careful now. I can hear pitchforks and people outside the purists are picketing outside your house right now.
they're always there. Whatever I say, they'll say.
I'm kidding. If anybody knows me, they know I'm not a purist.
Well, I'm currently, I think, right these days, and I was going to mention this later in something else that was coming up, but I'm in that mode of trying to do more with in camera, or capturing it, and less with post. But that doesn't mean that. I mean, I've been a big abuser of pixels in the past, and I still will be if I need to be. But I do like to try to get more and more right in camera. And just as I say that, I'm doing things like the sports I mentioned with the wrong kind of gear. I don't have that kind of gear, but it's all just for volunteers. So I just do a lot of cropping because I don't have those super zooms. So
Well, that's a nice thing about high megapixel cameras too, is that
mhm.
it gives you the flexibility to be able to crop.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm doing. Taking that 45 megapixels or whatever it is, and just using about 20 of them, but it's still enough. So
Hmm.
that's the workaround. Let's go to question number 2, and we can throw that one out into the garbage. We've
Wow,
got
that's a
Mike.
great soundbite.
Yeah, sure. Just call it out so everybody hears it. Mike in San Francisco comes back with follow up with a nice open ended question. He had asked about NFTs before. Says what's the latest with NFTs and AI? So, oh my gosh, wide open. But I have
Mhm.
thoughts about NFTs and a little bit about AI. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go to? Let's talk about
Well,
NFTs. Let's
so
talk about
why
NFTs
don't you
first.
go first, because I probably have a different take, or maybe I do, or maybe I don't. But why
Oh,
don't you go
I
first?
guarantee
I'd
we
love
have
to hear
different
your thoughts
takes.
on it.
Well, yeah, NFT. Okay, so first, real quick background. Outside of photography, completely unrelated to photography, I'm a big fan of the whole blockchain, Bitcoin world, and because it's here to change the world. And so I'm yes, people make money on it, cool, but my interest comes before anybody ever was making any money on it, is to change the I don't want to get too much out of photography into uncomfortable worlds, but it puts the power into the people's hands and takes it away from centralized power. So that's huge. It's a huge change in the world. So NFTs are related because they are a blockchain based way of recording history. That's what blockchains do. They record something that's immutable. It's unchangeable. That's one of the important things. So I definitely want NFTs to be a big success. Now they showed up, and all of a sudden, and of course, the first thing is everybody just wants to make money off it. And it's so, to me, again, I'm happy if people are making money off it. I don't want to take that away, but the hype shouldn't be around that. The hype should be around changing the world. And NFTs are a way, before they got popular and were called NFTs, we were already experimenting with it to record intellectual property. So taking that power away from centralized power, in this case, it's the Library of Congress, there's a better way in the future of recording your intellectual property. That's not going anywhere, and it just needs to catch on. But it's currently being silenced or overrun by the money hype. So what I want people to do is, if you can go and find a way to profit from it, I don't want to stop anybody from doing that. I'm happy for you. But NFTs offer us this chance to register our IP. And not only that, you can follow it. So if you want to license it out, you can license it out. There are already structures in place that when you do that, to make this really simple, you can I don't have to just register it as Ron Pepper. I can register me as the photographer or maybe the producer. There can be the model. There can be other people involved that produced or did work on such and such a project. And then when it gets licensed out, they can all be included automatically, programmatically, blockchain based, and everybody would just get payments sent out without me or anybody else having to collect money and then share it with others. All that stuff can be automated, and the future can be amazing. So I want people just to focus on that part. And if you want to mint some and do auctions and get rich, fine. But let's remember that this can be a huge improvement to our business. It doesn't have to be just photography, other kinds of creative areas as well. And so that's my take on it, is be careful of the hype. And I just encourage people to understand what it is. There are ways of creating NFTs that will stick around forever, and you'll have a new kind of copyright. And so, yeah, that's what the message I want to send is: be careful of the hype, and just try to understand really how it's working. And I'll try. While Colin says something, I'll try to think of a good place to send someone to learn more, and
Yeah.
I'll add something to the show notes.
Well, I agree with you, and it's actually funny because I do remember that you and I had blockchain discussions before the word NFT was even coined or
Yeah,
minted.
yeah,
You know, like we've been talking, I believe we've been talking about blockchain and crypto and stuff for years now.
yeah.
So yeah, your thoughts are not really that different than mine. Right now, it's kind of the whole NFT industry right now is kind of having a little reshuffling of the deck, which is nothing shocking or unsurprising
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of like a gold rush. And then the problem is at the very beginning of anything, internet, whatever, because you remember net growth and all that stuff. I feel like I've lived through this before with the internet. It doesn't mean, it's the technology is amoral. It's neither good nor bad. It's how it's used. And I believe it's a great, it's basically it's like a certificate of authenticity. Like you go out and you buy a Michael Jordan jersey. How do you know that jersey really belonged to Michael Jordan? Because they have a certificate. But that's what the
Right.
blockchain does, is it basically applies a certificate to a digital, or it could also be a physical product. So basically uh, it's ticket of authenticity. But I also believe, and this is where I'm kind of looking at it for myself, is it's a licensing. It's a new way of licensing. So let me give you an example just to kind of tell this story, and maybe this will make sense. And this is, and because you're probably expecting me to start talking about my photography. I have sold a few NFTs in photography, but that's not what I'm even going to mention. So for example, like I've been publishing video-based training for many years. I was one of the first, if not the first company, even though I was an individual, but I became a company that actually did CDs. Everyone else was doing VHS tapes. I was like, literally, Kelby didn't have tapes. Linda didn't. They were actually, Linda wasn't even doing those. They were doing books. Kelby was doing tapes, and then I put out CDs, which later became DVD ROMs.
Right.
And people would buy those off me, and they kind of had this sense of ownership. It was like, oh, I have the CD, and it's like you bought Photoshop on CD. You don't own Photoshop. You just had a license to Photoshop. Somehow you assigned this, value to this piece of plastic
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
contained the data, but the data is actually where the value is. But there was a sense of ownership. But then it did give a couple of things that you could do, right? So, say example, I bought a CD. Well, it's just simple. I buy Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon CD. I love it. I listen to it, and I'm like, oh, my friend wants to borrow. Oh yeah, here's the CD. Borrow it, turn it in your car, listen to it. And then when I'm done, I'm like, I don't like Pink Floyd anymore, which is not true. I'll always like Pink Floyd, but I'm like, what? I'm done with this. I'm going to take it to swap meet. It has some value. I'm going to sell it to somebody and get rid of it. Now, if you had Black Sabbath Live at Last, which I did, that album actually went up in value, and that was just an album. Their first edition was going for $10,000. Oh, but this is just a piece of plastic, right? But suddenly it has value because it's a piece of plastic. And then fast forward to digital, pre NFT. I'm like, hey guys, I'm not doing CDs anymore. And I still had, well, not so much now, but I had customers saying, I want a DVD, I want ownership. And I'm like,
Right. Right.
no one has a DVD player. They haven't put a drive in an Apple computer for a dozen years.
Yep.
So now everything goes digital. And then, so people are getting the same data. In fact, they're getting higher resolution than they got before. They're getting instant delivery when they're buying a digital download. They're not paying shipping. You don't actually even have to pay a sales tax on a digital sale currently in the United States. I'm sure that'll change eventually. But so essentially what's happening is they're like, okay, so you're getting the same content or better content, but then people don't have a sense of ownership. Okay, so where am I going with all of this? Well, let's talk about NFTs. I released a course as an NFT, and I've sold one. And I say I've sold one because that might be the first full-length course It's definitely the first one I know of that sells as NFT. So why just not sell it as a digital download? Why sell it as an NFT? Okay, because number one, now the person has ownership. They have the digital equivalent of that piece of plastic on that record. Because remember, that piece of plastic on that CD is not really worth anything. But somehow we say, oh, you're just selling me air. You're selling me. Well, that piece of plastic wasn't worth anything either, guys.
Right.
Just a piece of plastic, right?
Coaster.
So it's the content and the ownership and the proof of ownership, right? So when you buy a course, or the person that bought the course off me as an NFT, they were able. So it's utility, right? So that they have an image or whatever, but it comes with a link, and that link enables them to download it. So why is it different than buying a digital download? Well, one, it gives them a proof of ownership. Now, if they
Yeah.
want to lend it to a friend, they can transfer it to someone else's wallet. If
So
they want to resell it later on, they now have, because if I buy a digital course, a digital download, you can't resell that. But if you buy it as an NFT, guess what? You can. And so
yeah.
it's the utility. So now let's go to the artwork. I have photographs I've sold, but what the photographs come, and by the way, I'm not selling mine for ridiculous amounts of money. These are selling for what I would sell a regular course or a regular print. But I have people contacting me say, "Hey, I want to buy a print. I love your drone photos." I mean, I got inundated with people wanting to buy prints. I don't want to. I've done that. I have done the CD thing where I made discs and put them in boxes and go down to the post office every day for armloads of boxes. I don't want to do that. I haven't found an online service that I'm happy with that can faithfully reproduce my art in the way that I would like it printed. I don't want to spend all day on my Epson printer printing out pictures and mailing them off to people. And also, hey, what happens if that edition sells out in that size and the person wants it in a different size?
Right.
So my solution to that is, okay, buy one of my NFTs. Some of them are one of one, which means that image will only ever be sold once. Or it could be an edition of 25, just like you would do in prints, or 50 or whatever. And then the person buys it. What it gives them is a utility. The utility is you have the right to print this. So if somebody buys, say, one of my, which people have, they bought my image, and then that has a link within it. That's the utility, or the value is in the utility, where they download the full resolution image and they now have the rights to print that for their own personal use. So
So
if I want
there's
to print one of my prints, choose the print, buy it for the same price I would sell you a print. But now you can print it yourself, print it wherever you want, whatever size you like, and now you have it. And as long as you own that NFT, you have the ability to print these for yourself, not for resale. But here's the
yeah,
nice
I
thing
was
about it:
going to
when you're
ask you.
done, you've got the print on your wall. You're like, I'm done. Okay, then just resell the NFT to somebody else, and they can sell it for the same price. If they want to sell it for more, and they can, good. But I never tell people, hey, you're going to get rich off buying my NFTs, because that's not what I'm about. It's just about giving you the utility to make that print, sell it to somebody else. And then this is where it works out nice for the artist, because now it's on the chain, like if you were, like buying a course and then you share the course with a friend, I don't get anything. You print it and then you give it to a friend, they print it. In the pre-NFT world, you don't get anything. But here you consider royalty. So that means that that person prints it. If they sell it for the same amount that they paid for it, guess what? They go to print for free, but I get 10% of that. Now I get a royalty as the creator. So every time that changes hands and someone else prints it, I mean, yeah, I don't get, say it was $150 for a print. I don't get 100, maybe I get $15, but hey, I'm
Yeah.
getting something in return for those people, printing that out and putting it on the wall. So, I mean, I think as a utility, it really has a future. And, that's just a very practical kind of case.
Yeah, that's what I was. That was one of my questions I had for those prints. So, you've taken advantage of that opportunity that if someone buys the rights, they have the rights to sell, but you still get something when that happens. So that's one of the myriad of things that the NFT can solve.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there's no problems that come with it, but it solves so many things. I wanted to ask you about the course. Did you sell? So you're selling the basically licensing the course, and you mentioned one person bought it, but could it be as many people that want to could buy the rights to that?
Yeah. So you can release them as editions. You, as the creator, you to determine the size of the edition, meaning like you determine the price, you determine how many of them are available, and then you determine the royalty if you want one.
So
So
that could be the future of pricing. Excuse me, of selling rights or licenses to courses or software or
yeah,
just about anything.
exactly. And which is why, like, so I actually had the course available as a digital download. So I took, my most popular course, and then I made it into an NFT. I think I did like an edition of 100. Um, but what was interesting about it is when I released I literally released these right on when everything crashed. And so there was another stuff that, you just can't listen to the hype meisters, when they say, oh no, this is a hedge against inflation. No investment is a hedge against a bad economy, because when the economy goes bad, everything goes bad. You know, everything goes down
Well,
except
unless you're in the liquor business, that always stays that stable.
right. Well, that's true, and I actually have shares in Constellation Brands because of that very
There
reason.
you go.
But that doesn't mean that my Adobe stocks and my Apple stocks didn't go into the
Yeah,
toilet, because they did.
yeah,
But what happened? It's all tied together, because you got to think about, like, because now we're getting. I won't talk too long about investment, because we're in a different world. But everything is basically attached to the economy, because the economy is dependent on the free cash flow, right? So if interest rates are low, money's cheap, people buy stocks, and they're like, well, what else can I invest in? They'll buy. That's part of the reason why all these meme stocks became popular. NFTs got into a kind of a speculative phase, because people
yeah,
had money
yeah.
to speculate.
That's what I was going to say with that
Ethereum
cheap
was
money.
high, Bitcoin was high, crypto was high, and people buying Shiba Inus and
Right.
Dogecoin, all this stuff, which is, I'm not a big fan of buying something that's attached to another person's personality. So, like, basically, if Elon Musk gives it a nod, it goes up. If Elon Musk
Yeah.
says something bad, it goes down. That's not, something I would invest in. But everything is kind of tied together. So if people are not making money, like the stock market's going down because the Fed is tightening interest rates. The Fed has decided, hey, there's more demand than there is supply. We have to limit the amount of demand by making money more expensive. So they hike up interest rates. And
Right.
then guess what? People don't have as much free money. And that's why, cryptos went down, just like stocks and everything else. So it's all connected. But I'm actually kind of excited about that, because what happened is NFTs got a little out of control. I mean, there's like some really legitimate artists that have fantastic work and deserve all the success they got. But at the same time, there was people going to the fridge and pulling their kids' art from school, off the refrigerator, and taking a photo of it and minting it and trying to sell
Yeah.
it for 5 Ethereum, and they're not an artist. So there was a lot of noise. And so everything has to go through this shaker, has to go through this for the cream to rise to the top. Like the internet was the same. I mean, I remember the early days of the internet. All this stuff. It was just crazy. The .com.
Oh yeah.
We all heard. The 18-year-olds driving around in Ferraris and
Oh no, Colin. I was
signing
living.
bonuses, and there was
I was living
no
in the
there
middle.
was no business model. There was
Yeah.
there was nothing really stable. So I just think everything has to go through that, and it goes through that, and then now what rebuilds out of this, the NFT 2.0, if there's such a thing, is going to be much more legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be around speculation and gold rush and hype so much as, you actually have to come up with a solid utility, or you have to, be a real artist,
Yeah. Yeah.
with a reputation, a future. You're like, okay, because the people that have stuck around are artists that were successful artists before they started selling NFTs,
Mm-hmm.
and then they moved into NFTs, and guess what? They're still an artist. But then once they're not making the money, just weeds out the people that don't need to be in that industry.
Do you think there will continue to be a demand for, like, the NBA was making NFTs out of video clips, and I didn't see the.
That's a good question. Because yeah, I do, because because now you're getting into a different side of that. Because collectors, collections are legitimate. Like, I'm not against that.
like being a
And
trading
it's
card.
always been there, like Pokemon cards or football cards or whatever.
Hmm.
Collectibles are always going to be collectibles. And you can say, well, it's just a JPEG. It doesn't have any value. Well, neither does a piece of paper. But guess what? Some of those pieces of paper sell for millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's those things that when I try to get my head around it, I always just go back to something I understand is, I can go buy a basketball at Target for $15, but if that thing is signed by Michael Jordan, that's a whole different ball game. There's a whole different value to it.
Yeah,
Hey, a lot of people don't give a darn about who Michael Jordan is, but a lot of people do. So that's what
yeah,
collectibles are about.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
And
get
then
the
some people want to collect. Let them collect. Like,
well. I hope it at least becomes. Hope the hype kind of settles down, it smooths out, so that our industry and music and, well, video is the same industry, but similar groups start to use so-called NFTs as a way of just registering, and it's on
yeah,
an open public ledger, which is what a blockchain is, and so
yeah,
it's provable that you can say. So then, when someone, maybe I should wrap this up and say, then when someone like Rob, or usually he's on the shows with me, he had like a problem where I forgot which company, a big company, furniture maker, I think, was using his photos that were supposed to be for a real estate client, and they were
mm,
using it for their marketing. Like, hello, you can't do that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a whole registration process in the U.S. He's not even in the U.S. We could have another advantage to this is there are no borders on blockchains, so these can be registered on even the Bitcoin blockchain, but could be others that you can go back and see. Yep, there it is. That shows that they own that,
mm,
and as long as it's recognized, which is another hurdle, then we can use that as proof of is the word provenance, I guess, the originator.
yeah.
So
Well, one other
that's
thing I would want to add in there, just before we wrap up the NFTs, because I know we're kind of segueing out of that just quickly, but just one other use is concert tickets. Say, for example, if I go to, we were talking about this earlier, I go to a lot of concerts. I like music. I'm not really a sports fan, but this could be for sports. But the problem is with concerts, it's a very well known fact that scalpers, so like all the good seats
mhm.
sell out very early. And then the scalpers, jack the prices. The artists don't get the money, by the way. When you buy a seat for $3,000 and the face value is $120, the artist gets based on the 120, not the
Oh yeah.
3,000. So the scalpers are basically ruining a lot of concert going experiences. So when that all moves to NFTs, that's going to get rid of all of that too.
But so you could actually have people can be scalping, but that would almost, maybe, I don't want to say it's going to be okay, but would it be okay because those smart contracts send a percentage or an amount to the artist, no matter what the sale price is or a percentage of the sale?
Well, I mean, yeah, I could. I mean, that would be good for the artist, but at the same time, I think it could limit the scalping because, when a scalper buys a ticket, they're completely anonymous.
Hmm.
Especially if they're just buying off people on the street. But when it's on the blockchain, it goes to their wallet. It's trackable.
So
Um,
it
you
could be a
know,
it could be a peaceful solution. So instead of having to police this and make it a crime, it could be a peaceful solution of just either one of a couple things. Either it just kind of can't work because it's no longer anonymous, or just let it work because it's still fair for the artists. In fact, maybe it's a bad thing if they if they start selling it for more and they still get a percentage. But maybe there's just like I'd call it like an Aikido way of solving something. Like just go with it and
yeah.
make it a way that it no longer is a problem, or that there's no benefit to doing it, one or the other. But instead of just the old
Yeah.
fashioned, every
Well,
problem is
yeah. I mean, it
every.
might be good. It might be good for the artist, but it's still not good for the concert goer because you've got the real fan can't afford to go to the show and get a good seat.
Yeah.
But say for example, I'm not sure necessarily how they would do it, but like if you have a collection and the tickets are part of like say Adidas Originals is a good example. So they make an edition of so many, then it has a floor price. So the floor price is, what is the cheapest one selling for? And so if you have that and it's on the blockchain and you're buying your concert ticket or whatever, There's ways to limit people buying a certain amount, but then at the same time, if it's a set floor price that's on the blockchain, then some scalper can't come along and highly inflate the price because people are not going to buy it.
Those sound like those are new, so I'm processing in my brain. That sounds like really interesting use cases for something that I'm already interested in. So yeah, we'll canoodle on that. And anybody listening, we before the show, Colin and I were throwing around the idea of doing like a roundtable type talk just about NFTs and or AI. So we could bring in a couple other people that know more, at least than I do, and kind of go deeper. So if you have thoughts and questions on that we could base that show around, we could try to put that together. So similarly, that gets wrapped into the same conversation oftentimes is AI, even though even though it's really not the same subject, the AI creation of art now, which now is maybe we're talking about NFTs less because everyone's talking about AI, where you can just literally tell an artificial intelligence engine what you want and it'll create it for you. And it is related in a way because I've toyed around with them, and when I get my result, some of the systems ask if I want to mint it as an NFT right there. So it is related in that way. But this AI scene, I don't know how deep we want to go into this one. Mike was asking what's the latest, and I'm like, well, a lot, because now there are several of these emerging AIs. I think Dolly is still leading it, but I know, Colin, you're saying you've used some other ones. What have you? Let me try to frame a question of my own, because Mike let us be so wide open. Do we see this being? Do we see this being huge in the future? I think is right now, since we've seen it grow just a little bit, so that people have been able to play with it and try it. I've seen it popping up in places where people are doing custom art, and now people are putting in AI submissions to compete with other art, and people are loving it and hating it. And is this going to stick around? Is it good? Let me put it this way. Do you think it's good for this industry, like the photography specifically, rather than art in general?
Well, that's a good question. I think as many as diverse as the art that can be created with AI, you're probably going to get that many answers. Um, it depends. I mean, the one I've been playing around with is Midjourney, and I see a lot of that. Like, at least the people I'm following on Facebook and stuff, I just seem to be inundated with it. Like everything is Midjourney all of a sudden, and Dali is another one. Like maybe that's the bigger one. I don't know, but it seems like a lot of the people I know are all using that. So I played around with that a little bit, and I got on it the beta. Towards the tail end of the beta, I actually was fortunate. Someone invited me in, and it's interesting. So I did do a video on it, a tutorial on it on YouTube, where I did a 20-minute. I think first half I talked about like some tips on how to actually generate it, like the whole process, how to get started, how the prompts work. And then I had a little discussion on it because, I even had some comments from people like, thanks for talking us off the ledge, because, it can be quite frightening in a way, because traditionally, people spend a lifetime to master a craft, never really master it, but it's just, and then, it becomes, as an artist, you're kind of almost like your status is in how good your art is. And it's not, and it's not, like, oh, you're so gifted. Most of the time, no, it's just work. Like the people that work the hardest are the more gifted than the people that don't work hard at it. Like, yes, some people have a natural inclination more than others, but if you work hard, then your craft becomes better because it's a craft. And then, to have somebody with no art experience put in a few words and then spat out something that looks like someone that's been doing art for years can be kind of terrifying for some people. At the same time, it's progress. It's what's there. I don't want to be a Luddite and fight against that, because, the Luddites are the people that broke the looming presses, back in the day when they were making clothing.
Broke the what?
So they created the loom, put a lot of you know clothing people, textile people out of work, and so they went and broke up. They were called the Luddites after a guy Ludd,
Oh, is that
and
where that
they
came from?
went and busted all the machinery in all the factories, and that was kind of like what was going on. It was the revolution trying to stop the progress. Now it made sense because the textile workers were making a good wage, and by bringing in this press, it did put a lot of people out of work. But at the same time, it brought down the price of clothing, where people could now own more than one outfit. So it's going to happen no matter what. So it's it's happening. It's going to happen. But I talk to artists, concept artists, um, and a lot of people that are kind of like that really are masters of the craft. I mean, I see some posers. I shouldn't call them posers, but I see some people going on about it because they could never create art before, and now they are an artist because the AI spat
Yeah.
that out for them. But that's a whole other discussion. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute if you want. I don't know, but people that I know that have been working as professionals for years in the industry that really have developed the craft are not worried at all, because they're saying, it's just another tool. It's a tool, So like you have an idea, you can put it into the AI. The AI can pull out a concept. It can give you ideas. You can take those concepts, and then if you have like real skills, you can use those as a base and build off them and modify them and turn it into
Right.
whatever you want. So you could kind of look at it that way. And since I've been using it more, it's not there's definitely some caveats. Like, yes, it's very realistic, but it's not going to ever give you specifically what you want. You have a picture in your mind. It's not going to give you that. It's going to give you its interpretation of it.
What about
Um,
this? What about this analogy of just that? I've been saying forever that things like mobile phone cameras, even before let's see, maybe try to put the thought into into uh, organize it a little bit. I've been saying for a long time that simple cameras, point and shoot. Now it's mobile phones. I use those little 360 Ryko Theta cameras, and I come from a
mhm.
360 background. But the Ryko Theta, the iPhone point and shoot cameras, they're all really awesome. But you're going to get what you're going to get. It's going to give you what it gives you, and it has its limitations. Whether it comes from a small sensor or whatever it is, they all have their limitations, and you don't have full control. So putting it in in the context of let's say one of the best professional photographers with lighting, and you're going to plan the scene, create the scene. You're going to use every kind of light modifier you need for that scene. You're going to create um, makeup and hair and everything. You're in control of everything. You can't do that with those automatic things. So is the AI similar to that, where if I have a very dis, distinct specific idea and I want to create that art, a great artist can create that art, or you can try an AI engine that will get you something close, but it's going to give you what it's going to give you. Is that does that
That's
analogy sound right?
sort of, but it's getting better. I mean, even to use the example about the phones. I mean, the computational photography is getting better and better. And
Yeah,
I have the
yeah,
Google, the Google Pixel 6a, which enables me to do like motion and like a lot of stuff I could do on a camera. So
yeah.
I
My
think
analogy's
the
dying.
lines are getting blurred. But as far as the AI, it's more like you're not the artist, and you're the art director. You're not the artist, and that's why I
Ooh,
hate when people call themselves AI art. You're not an artist. You're an art director. You are
like that.
asking somebody else to create this art for you, and this happens to be a robot. So rather than you, if you're the artist, you have the picture in your head, and you can create exactly what's in your head.
Hmm.
When you're the art director, the closest you're going to get is how well can you give the instruction that and how well can you describe what is in your head.
That's
And that's
really
what you're
good. That
doing in the AI is
yes,
you're giving it a prompt. You're describing what you want,
you're not the
and
talent.
then the better you can describe it, the closer you're going to get. Just like if you have another artist, you have an artist that's working for you, you're commissioning artists to say, hey, I want this. And so basically, instead of giving an artist the list, you're giving it to a computer, and then the computer is going to spit it
That's
out.
perfect. That's a really good way to think of it. You're not the talent, you're the director. Yes, the
Yeah,
producer.
and there's a talent in being a director, of course,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's a different skill set.
Well, just like David Letterman would say, he would say, "I'm just the talent. I'm just the one out here that people want to watch." but the directors and the producers have their own talents of creating what they want to create with him as being the talent. So yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Thanks, appreciate that.
Yeah. So maybe you're a
So
communicator rather than an
mhm.
artist. You know.
Well, there's going to be a talent or a specific through experience and talent and practice, people are going to develop prompting.
Yeah, yeah, and there's some people right now that are really good at it, and they get really good results. Yeah.
Oh, really cool. Well, let's see. So let's see. My segue question will be, if I enter into the prompt, if I say, show me a, let's just use a basic, show me a cat photo in the style of Colin Smith. Is that cat going to be up in the air like it's taken from a drone? What am I going to get?
Actually, I got a funny anecdote to that. So I actually did one of those, and what it actually ended up doing is, to use your analogy, mine was a different one. It would be a cat, but it would like have my face on it. So like I
Yeah.
thought it was going to go in the style of the artist. They actually made it look like the artist.
Okay. Yeah. There. Good. That's one of the prompts, right? You can say, "Show me a scene of a village and a blah 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 in the style of
Oh, sure.
Rembrandt or
Yeah.
something like that," and those will
Yeah, yeah.
are
So you can
well
give an
known prompts.
object, you can give a mood, you can
Mhm.
give an art style, you can even tell it what kind of camera angle, aspect ratio, lighting, rendering, yeah, and anything you can think of, basically.
So people want to try it out. They want to search Stable Diffusion. That's the one you like. You said or
Stable diffusion,
Mid
no, I
Journey
don't
or
know. It's
Mid
not
Journey
so easy to use. I think it requires
or you said
um,
Mid Journey. I got the wrong one.
Mid Journey works through Discord, so you just basically you go to Mid Journey, sign up, and then go to a Discord server, and then you
Cool.
just have a bot, and
Huh.
you just basically tell the bot in Discord how to do it. And if you don't know how to do that, I've got a tutorial on YouTube where I explain how to do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like I was worried we were going to go a long time on that. We did. So let's move on. Um, you like
You
you
could
like my
get bogged down in that
you like my
for
sound, right? Okay, real quick, I wanted to since you're here and I saw you did this, let's do like a lightning, just like 10, just like 20 seconds. iPhone 14,
a long time. Okay.
go.
Oh, okay.
I haven't got one yet. But I saw you
Okay.
did something on it.
So you must have seen my review when I did my review on this.
I just saw that you did it. I didn't watch it
Oh,
yet.
okay. So I did a review on here, and basically all I talked about is the camera. And long story short, the phone, the things I don't like about it, dynamic island is just like took the two most annoying features, the notifications and the notch, and then like instead of having the notch at the top, now they're just owning the notch and it moves and pulsates like
Yeah.
this annoying, like it's like Sauron in the middle of my phone.
So not in a good way.
Some people love it.
Yeah.
I wish they would just get rid of the notch,
Can you turn it
but
off? Can you turn it off?
well, the
Dynamic
notch
island.
is like hardware. You can't get
But I
rid
mean
of
the
it.
dynamic island. Can you turn it
It's
off?
the dynamic. I don't know. It's just it's I don't know. Steve, let me just say, if Steve Jobs was alive, he would not have allowed the notch, and he would have not
Yeah.
allowed the camera bump. Like, he would have
Yeah.
said, "Fix it." Like we can't.
So
He would have said,
that's
"Fix
a
it," and
swing
they
and a
would have
miss.
just said anyway. But all that aside, the fact that it still has a lightning cable instead of a USB-C. When Apple's making this whole
I know, right?
thing about like, oh, we're saving the environment by not giving you power bricks. Well, if you cared
Yeah.
about the environment, why are you making everyone buy another cable?
Yep. Yep. It's
It's
still. I
not.
can't
It's
believe it's
just a
still that. Yeah.
profit thing. But anyway, the camera. Anyway, I'll calm down now. So the whole thing about the phone that I got it for was the camera. And it's got three cameras. It's got a new camera, 48. This one here is a 48 megapixel camera. Now, the 48 megapixel camera only works when you're shooting in RAW. They call it Pro RAW, which it's RAW. It's a DNG, but it does have some extra information in there. Steve Brazil, thank you for letting me know about that, because it includes depth maps and stuff like that, which your regular RAW file doesn't. But anyway, the cameras, the three cameras, the long camera and the wide camera, barely changed. The long camera's the same. The zoom camera, the wide camera's changed a little bit. The regular camera, you're shooting in regular mode. It's not that different. It's that same over processed, over sharpened, artifacty kind of thing. But then when I shot in a new camera in RAW at 48 megapixel, it actually looks it's mind blowing. It looks like a real camera. Like
You
it's
can't do that
not
through the
scratchy and it's actually really good quality.
can you shoot raw through the regular camera app, or do you need to use another app?
No, the RAW is through the Apple Camera app. So when you're in the camera, you've got a little button on the top. You just tap it, and it goes RAW. You can shoot RAW in any camera, but you can only get the 48 megapixel using the standard camera.
Okay, that's a good tip right there.
But the dynamic range, and someone apparently on YouTube thinks I don't know what dynamic range is. They had some comments say I was misusing the term, but the dynamic range, like the distance between the lightest pixel with detail and the darkest pixel with detail,
Mm-hmm.
that's the dynamic range, is oh yeah, that's right. We're we're HDR guys, of course.
Yeah.
So the dynamic range is really good. So for example, like shooting a sunset, I shot the sunset on the regular camera. You get the blown out kind of thing. And then when I went into the RAW camera, you could actually see the ball of the sun going down without it just blowing out this whole area.
All within the raw file, one raw file, not
Yeah.
using
Oh,
HDR
no,
mode.
no, it's still using computational photography. So it's still taking multiple images
Okay.
and then putting them together and creating a new one. But yeah, I
The
mean,
sensor size hasn't changed, right?
they say the sensor's twice as big as before or something. It's bigger. I forget the stats. Yeah, they
Well,
have
that would
enlarged the sensor.
explain that. That's one of the downsides to smaller sensors is dynamic range and artifacts that come from things like if you're trying to shoot a high dynamic range scene. So if the sun is in the scene, or if you're shooting out a window from inside of dark place, you'll get more artifacts from lens type issues with the smaller sensor. So you get a little more bloom, a lot more noise, depending. And so
Mhm.
having a bigger sensor is always like
Oh, sure.
the
Yeah.
Ryko Theta that I mentioned, the latest ones, they started getting bigger sensors, and so
Yeah, yeah.
boom, better quality right there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, the sensor is actually bigger in the standard camera. And one of the things they're doing too is it quad Bauer or something, so like, when you look at the Bayer sensor, you have the different colors. Usually it's twice as many greens, right? The RGBs, and then there's
RGBG,
like
yeah,
two greens, and there's a red, and then
yeah.
there's a blue, then a green, then a red, then and then that's because the sensor, there's no color in there. Basically, it's just a coating that has the color over the top, which is how it produces the color. But they're using a technology where instead of each one being individual, four of them can work as a cluster. So four of them will work like say one green sensor, and then four red sensors work as one red sensor. And like the larger the sensor size, the better it is in low light. So they're kind of using this kind of computation like that to reduce the noise in the
Yeah, I
image.
read about that, and wasn't able to commit it to memory really.
Yeah, I
I
mean, I might
mean,
not be saying it perfectly correct. I mean, someone is obviously, there's people out there know more about that than I do. But yeah, but I mean, I've just noticed though, I did a comparison and looked at them side by side there, and I compared it with the 13. Like the regular camera, the photos didn't really look that much different. You had to really pixel peep, but when you look at the RAWs, it really is night and day different.
nice. Well, it's good. It's good. My my reason to I'm still on a version 11, and so I'm kind of interested in upgrading because I don't have the lidar. I want to have that
Yeah,
distance
yeah.
measurement. So it's just like I love carrying around the iPhone for personal stuff and using portrait mode and all that. And that
Hmm.
lidar lets you select the background or the subject just
Yeah, yeah,
because of the
yeah.
distance. And not even I was complaining, I guess I'll use the word, on one of these other shows that we did, that who's going to add lidar to a DSLR or a mirrorless? Let's go,
No,
people. Like they have all these great gadgets, and let's go. We need that.
Oh,
how
yeah.
many how many courses have you created on selections to select out a subject? Well, you don't need that if you have the LiDAR, right? It's automatic. And I've seen
Right.
it.
Well, it's definitely helping. The I've been following the portrait mode. So one of the interesting things, just worth mentioning, and of course I have no affiliation with Apple. I actually have more of an affiliation with Google because I actually do test their Pixel phones. But the uh, because of the larger sensor, it actually has a little bit of natural depth of field in the camera now, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But it was funny because you brought up the LiDAR. I've been comparing these, for years, as you probably have in portrait mode, and seeing how well the masking is. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
the masking, LiDAR makes a huge difference because the masking is getting better and better, but it's still pretty bad compared to what you would do in Photoshop.
Right. Well, again, it's good enough. It's not pro. It's but it's at the same time it's great because I have thousands of photos that I wouldn't have had, and so good and bad. But I'm a big fan of. I love all the mobile phone cameras and everything. It's just they all have their uses.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's since you're a drone guy, I wanted to ask you if you have anything to add. We had someone asked last time about why they get distorted images from the drone, like why are there curved lines and vignetting in the edges, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, so I'll just review my answer before. Is that
Hmm.
that is like drone has a very small sensor, a very small camera. It's light because it has to be light. It's there to fly. So the it's not the greatest camera in the world, and one of the things is that you get quite a bit of distortion, and that means that the horizon will be curved, and the edges will be black, and that's what you're getting from the camera. That's what you're getting in the raw file. But the software right there in the camera, in the drone, corrects it immediately. So if you're getting those distortions, if you're seeing those distortions, use either you can have it do JPEG in the camera, and when you shoot, quote unquote, shoot JPEG, it's one of my favorite things to say is that nobody shoots JPEG. There's no such thing as shooting JPEG. It's raw data is what hits the sensor. You can't do anything about that. When you have a JPEG, it's just immediately converted. So with that in mind, if you see those distortions, it's not being converted. It's not converted with lens correction when it's converted. So you just need to use either the software that came with the camera or a big time raw converter like Adobe or some other high end one, that because the raw converter you're using just doesn't support the lens profile. And then I got some follow up questions that didn't really understand my answer, so I just thought I'd bring it up again since apparently I guess I did a bad job. Sorry about explaining that. But what do you think about that explanation? Is that do you have anything to add or clarify about that? Like, because I know since you wrote the book, I wanted to go ahead and answer it live like this, like instead of emailing people back.
Did they mention what drone or what camera it was, by any chance?
Probably, but I've seen enough examples of this because a couple of softwares that I use, there's PT GUI for stitching and Photomatix for HDR. They
Hmm.
rely on third-party raw converters and third-party lens profiles, so they don't support every single crazy brand new DJI and some others. And I see this in both of them. So the solution is just to convert it from raw first, and actually that way you get the best of both worlds. You get the dedicated raw conversion, and that applies to so many things like noise reduction and all kinds of good things that happen during raw conversion. And you get those lens profiles. So that's the solution, is to convert them first. And contrary to popular opinion, it really is the best quality wise, best kind of workflow, because all these other any software, when they work on your photo, they have to convert it from raw right away. So you might as well have it converted in the highest end one.
Well, the reason I asked that is because I have a number of drones, and I definitely have noticed that depending on which drone you have, because say for example, the Mavic 3 has a micro four thirds sensor on it,
It's getting bigger.
and it has a larger lens. So there's different. You're going to see this like a mini. You're going to see like, or a mini pro. You're going to see way more distortion than you're going to see on the one with the larger sensor. But then there's another couple of things to bear in mind too. Is if it's a DJI, lately DJI have actually been doing their own built-in profile. So when you bring it into Lightroom, you can't select a profile because it's already built in.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah,
Which
you can't even unselect it, even if for some reason
no,
you
and
wanted to.
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes
Mm.
it, so you have to go into the manual settings. But yeah, I mean, because you also work with a very wide lens, and that's another thing that people
Yeah,
have to bear in mind. And like you say, lightweight, so it's probably a plastic lens rather than glass on some of them. Some of them are glass, some are plastic, depending on which ones you're using. But yeah,
yeah. But I mean, the main point is to use Lightroom or another dedicated raw converter that's that specializes in that kind of thing. So
yeah.
hey,
Personally, I don't like being forced with the built-in profile. I would
yeah,
rather just get the DNG file, and then they submitted the profile to Adobe or whatever, and then I could choose to add it or not add it.
yeah.
I think that would be kind of a nice option.
I did notice one. I think it was for my Olympus. I'm not sure that it's not even possible to unselect the profile. And
And you
I
can't
thought,
on the new DJI ones, not
yeah,
in Lightroom anyway.
yeah, I found that a little bit weird. But I guess they're trying to keep things simple and keep things working behind the scenes to make things easier for people. But some of
Well, I'm
us,
also going to imagine the way they're building the camera, that the profile is part of the design of the camera.
yeah, it has to be because they know that the lens is not very good, so they have to use software to take care of the problems. And I'm not
Yeah,
even saying that in a bad way. I'm saying I have a flying camera. I'm excited,
yeah,
and there are drawbacks with it. So that's how they're solving it, and that happens a lot with
yeah.
micro four thirds and wide angle lenses.
Mhm. But
There's a lot
they're
of
a lot
software
better than
fixes.
they used to be.
Yeah,
The early ones were like, I remember the Vision 2 camera. It wasn't much better than a webcam. I mean, they've really come a long way.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a huge. If I sound down on some of these things, it's not. I'm excited about all of them. But
Mm.
hey, we're going long, but let's hit one other question. Normally, I might just say let's just end. I might not even say anything, just and kind of cut off here. But I have Colin Smith here, so JJ from south of the border. Oh wait, sorry. There we go. All right.
Are you actually really screwing those up, or is that a sound?
No, it's a sound.
I had to know. I had to know. Sorry if I ruined it.
I want to do sounds, but I don't want to go total cringe. It's for my own entertainment, but I'm trying to. I don't want to do it. I want to let's do one more question and get out of here. I mean, we're keeping people a long time. Thanks for listening through. If you're listening on Thursday or later when this goes out, we have someone who calls himself, herself, himself, JJ from south of the border. And this is why I wanted to make sure to ask this question today, because I might not have you around to answer this next time. But what is the best tool to create selections in Photoshop and Lightroom? I mean, what a question for a Photoshop guy. And let's let me frame it a little bit. Selections is a huge subject, and you can spend a lifetime learning and improving and finding different techniques to make the selections depending on what you're doing. So let's keep this a little bit simple and make it and adjust his question a little bit into asking you, Colin, is what do you think of the selection tools now? The ones that are out there, like there's a one-click select subject. There's sky replacement, so just like skies. That's because let's be real. That's what's happening there. Is it's a selection, right? When you replace a sky, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? And what do you think of the tools versus doing it manually, the old-fashioned way? With would you say the ultimate selection tool is a pen tool? That would be my
That
answer.
depends. Yeah. So, as far as, well, Lightroom's easy. The best tools are the masks because that's all you've got on Lightroom. So you don't have all the selection tools in Photoshop.
Right.
So, whether it be the auto mask or you're using the brush or you're using the auto mask and then fixing it with the brush, which is usually what you end up doing.
Which for most, a
But
lot
then
of photography is
Photoshop,
good enough, right?
mhm.
Which for a lot of photography out there, the Lightroom selections and adjustments is usually enough, right?
Yeah, they're great. They're great. They're
Yeah.
really, they're good tools. Sometimes you got to refine them a little bit, but you can definitely get great results with them.
Mm.
They work well. Yeah. And then in Photoshop, I mean, depends what you're doing. I mean, as far as if you want a solid edge, like a hard surface, yeah, a pen tool's definitely going to give you the most accurate because it's a vector and it's going to, be a pixel perfect edge on it. And also, just very, very clean. But, I wouldn't want to cut out a tree with the pen tool. Or hair, or attempt to do any of that. So it depends on what you're working on. Like the one click, like it depends. One, are you doing print and high resolution, or are you doing web? If you're doing web and social media, a lot of the time you don't need the pen tool because people are not looking at it so closely. Um, so as far as there's two parts of selection: is making the selection and then the edge. The edge is actually more important. So you can make your selection using the quick select or whatever you want, or it could be, the magic wand or the, whatever you're
Yeah.
using. Um, that what really matters is how good the edge is. And sometimes you need a soft edge. Sometimes you need a hard edge. Sometimes, it could be color range. If you've got transparency, there's different types of selection tools for different topics. In fact, I did a whole 4-hour course on selections because there's so many different types of selections. But long story short, a lot of the time I will jump in very, very quickly and I'll just use the select subject and then go into select and mask and then just, clean it up inside select and mask. 90% of the time, that's going to get you what you need. If it's something like super detailed or high resolution, I'm going to be using things like pen tool, and sometimes it's just masks and literally painting masks by hand. Um, Depends on how accurate you need the selection. And yeah, I mean, so a lot of the time the quick selection tool will work most of the time. Yeah.
Cool. That's what I thought your answer was going to be, because that's what mine is, sorry, JJ, but there is not really a best tool. It depends on a lot of things. However, having said that, it sounds like using like the quick select tool plus refining is a good way to
Yeah.
be the
Yeah. Or
general
even
answer.
start with the auto selection, use select subject. And then before you go into refine, grab the selection brush and then just touch up some areas, that might
Mm.
need it. If it needs it, then go in. Because you want to get that selection as good as you can before you go into the refine edge or select a mask. I don't want to be in that tool trying to fix big things. So you can do that for selection. I'll give you a little tip too. So if you do the selection, you do the auto selection. What I like to do sometimes is then I'll take the selection brush and then I'll run it along the inside of that selection manually. And it doesn't even look like you're doing anything, but what you're doing is you're forcing that brush to use to kind of make those edges a little bit stronger. And sometimes that works for me too. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, good insider tip. Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, we've gone along, so let's basically wrap it up. It's the Photofocus Q&A show. I would say we made it more like a little bit of a round table for us, didn't we?
Yeah.
Between the two of us. But that's great to have you on. It's good to have new voices on. That's one of the reasons for doing the show. And introduce Photofocus audience to Colin and vice versa. For everyone listening, let me just drop, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but photofocus.com/questions is where you can send in by text or by audio. Please send audio questions. I want to play those. And if you send text questions, just proofread them. Sometimes I got to figure out what you're asking. And if you want to shape the show, you can do that by questions. Answer those questions. You can also shape the roundtable show if you have subject ideas for that. You can use the same photofocus.com/questions. I'll see them if they're appropriate for that. And Colin, what else can people know about you, where to find you? Photoshopcafe.com. Is there a better place?
PhotoshopCafe.com or YouTube at Photoshop Cafe.
All right.
Or the socials. I'm at Photoshop Cafe on all the socials.
I've been seeing Colin's content for a long time, and I can highly recommend. All right. Well, myself, ronpepper.com. Hey, it needs a lot of updating, but you can still find me and get a hold of me and see what I do there. Roughly what I do. And until next month, we'll have, in a couple weeks, we'll have a roundtable and another Q&A after that. So please comment or ask questions where I said, and we'll see you next month. Adios.